Peace and blessings, family. My name is Sam P.K. Collins, a.k.a. Raspo Queer Global, grassroots journalist and educator based in Washington, D.C., and this is the All Eyes on DC show on April 19th at Sankofa Video Books and Cafe, right across the street from Howard University. Once again, it's a pleasure having y'all here tonight. Tonight's topic is Black women in political spaces. When we're talking about Black women, we're talking about Black women in a part of D.C. that is often marginalized from the powers that be locally and nationally. You want to talk about D.C. in the sense of being the last colony, in the sense that Washingtonians are pretty much divided from their federal government. You know, this is a woman tonight who's going to talk about that and talk about her experiences in navigating those spaces and representing for Black women and Black people in general. So before we let her speak and weigh in on the situation happening across the city to Black Africans, I'm going to introduce Miss Maka Taylor. I'm going to read her bio, which is a very good one, as a matter of fact. Maka Taylor is a mother, parent practitioner, and social entrepreneur, and she's dedicated to raising awareness and developing strategies to eliminate social economic disparities. Her work spans public, private, and NGO operations. Native to St. Louis, Missouri, Maka now lives in D.C. and has founded Taylor Fam Philosophy and Global Games Consulting Services. Highly regarded as a research enthusiast, Maka is skilled in creating unique campaigns and special programs that are designed to affect social change. She has been an advocate and proponent for organizations like Empowerment DC and the National Association of HUD Tenants. As an HCVP tenant, she works to embody the HUD definition of HCVP compliance while exploring pathways to self-sufficiency through the HUD Section 3 program. She uses some of her time and intellect to testify on behalf of HUD HCVP tenants on record with the DC Housing Authority and board district council meetings. The language and ideation offered is to encourage high-level cross-collaboration in all sectors to educate, innovate, and prevent pathways to poverty. Additionally, Maka is a former member of Parent Watch, Trauma Informed Service Circle and CARE, and a Van Gassery focus group participant. Anchored in Ward 8, she often engages in discourses within local, regional, and national leaders, exactly what we're talking about, right? On behalf of marginalized communities. A graduate of Ferguson, Florissant School District in Eastern Missouri, Maka's journey into the world of advocacy began in her late 20s, when her weight of color, so she says, as she describes it rather, moves her to combat generational institutional systems. This decision prompted self-evaluation and personal development. This is when she began to meet influential personalities that would help change her life. And she has learned to apply these lessons in all that she does to become a winner. And with that being said, we're going to welcome Maka Taylor to All Eyes on DC. Y'all, let's give her a hand, family, please.
Thank you for having me. It's always a pleasure to speak with you.
No problem. Can you guys hear her?
Can you? Yeah, I can project.
All right, let's do it just for the mic, just to make sure everything gets caught, because we got a lot of good information coming up tonight. First, Maka, if you can pretty much talk to us about when you arrived in DC. You know, we mentioned that you've been here
10 years.
For about a decade, exactly.
Yeah,
you know,
it'll be 11 years in September.
And you know, so 09, a different time in DC politically, you know,
Absolutely.
nationally and locally. If you can talk about your move here and what did you experience upon coming to DC?
So I want to change my chair. Just bear with me. I moved here in 2008. I am a single, well, I no longer like to identify as a single parent because I have wonderful people in my life, and I know that there are many resources that I can tap into. But my situation in St. Louis just caused me to want something else. I had always had an opportunity to move here and work with, I'm not sure if you're familiar with them, but Baruch and Everlasting Life. And so that's what brought me here. I was part of the African Hebrew Israelite community at another time, had that connection, and that was available to me to move up here. And when I moved up here, it took about 6 months for that to kind of unfold. And after that, I ended up conceiving twins, which sent me on another path. And so that's kind of how I came into the advocacy, because now I have children And that kind of puts me in another position where I kind of have to look for things. I need to know where stuff is. I need to know how to cover myself. And in moving here, it was, for lack of a better way of putting it, if you all would just allow me to tell my story, it was a culture shock. It was truly a culture shock. I thought that I was moving to a place that was progressive and that would welcome idea and innovation. And what I found when I moved here, when I would go into agencies, is disrespect and just really bad treatment, to the point of where I would have the situation that I'm already coming to see you with, which causes whatever trauma it does. If I'm having bill problems and I need to check on utility assistance or whatever it is that I'm doing, I'm calling to see where my son can go to school. So I would have the issue that I was dealing with, and then I would have a customer service issue, because I felt like you were treating me like nothing. Like the reception, the customer service, the welcomeness, I just didn't feel it, to the point of where I actually started recording my phone calls. So this isn't even just local. I've called the FBI, and that's really the one that I have, the major call, where you can hear me saying stopping and going into customer service. So that is like, wow, it was a culture shock, in where I have to now advocate and be able to speak for myself. And seeing the way that others were treated it was just mystifying to me. And I knew that if I could be treated like that, and I'm typically a relatively sturdy young woman, I could only imagine what the women and the young women who did not have those same resources or that articulation. And so what would happen is, every room that I went in, as opposed to me finding someone who I could simply attach myself to work through the level of thinking that I needed, the customer service level that I needed, I didn't get that in that room. And so I would find myself becoming that voice for myself and anybody who chose to chime in.
What does becoming that voice entail?
It entails definitely being willing to be on the outside. First of all, it is not a welcome place, and I deal with it. So let's say if I'm at the big chair, and I know that you are supposed to be open until 4:45 p.m., but you stop seeing people at 2:30. And so I'm in line, and I can advocate to the point of where you're gonna finish my business. But the young lady who was behind me, or the young lady who was in front of me, she got turned away. But I don't blame anybody. What I ask in those situations, especially if the crowd is getting antsy, is we all have phones today. And the way to make things move is either you put it through social media or you make the phone call. And so I always turn it back to us, especially in this time, because there is a demand that we have to make if you want to be treated in a certain. I know I love to be treated with dignity. To be honest, I like to be treated as an elite, because between me and my creator, that's kind of what we have going on. And so when I would see these actions in the customer service, and I mean, it was a traumatizing, like where I was on all fours in one of these agencies, and I had not used one curse word or disrespected anybody. And so, because it seemed like it's so ingrained in the culture, and when you're not native to DC, that's a whole other beast that you gotta get over. So it's, first and foremost, you have to be willing to be on the outside. I had to be willing to acknowledge that I'm not being treated like that. I care not how many came before me and how, that doesn't work for me. So it's finding a balance between picking my battles and maintaining my business.
So you talk about being on the outside. You know, of course, if you were to experience it, others were experiencing it as well.
Absolutely.
So even though you were on the outside, wouldn't you still be in solidarity with the other recipients of, you know, public assistance or whatever else who are just getting?
Well, I don't know that I can say solidarity so much, because like I said, I believe that our power is really in the people. And I understand that because I did move here, and in 10 years I have created an international network. And in 10 years I am talking to the illustrious Sam P.K. Collins, who is the journalist with The Informer and wherever, you know what I'm saying? And so there are these connections that you have, or 6 degrees of separation is very real in the District of Columbia. And so that's what I work to get my demographic to understand, that my statement is, all politics is local, which means if you live in DC, all politics can be federal. And not to say we can overstep the local government, but because, as I was sharing with Mr. Candidate earlier, policy starts in the think tanks. So if we really want to affect change, and I know when I go into the Hoover Institute, when I go into Brookings, when I'm at Pew, there's not a lot of me in there. But we are the most studied demographic, literally, in Ward 8.
Talk about these think tanks for people who may not be aware, because they're located in a different part of the city.
They are. They're located in where we just renovated on 8th Street. So when I moved here too, the development was still in process. 8th Street did not transition. I really wish that I would have taken a photographic journal of that, because the transition is just amazing to have watched. I have always considered myself, I enjoy learning. I'm a self-taught, non-traditionally educated individual. So when I moved to DC and working to find my balance of social life and work, I did figure out that the think tank, which means that where your policy or your institutions come together, is what the think tanks are. So when they want to push legislation or push an idea, typically a white paper will come out of somewhere like your Hoover Institute, Pew, Cato, and so these are your political think tanks behind the politics. And so when I came here, I was absolutely amazed, because there is an immediate connection between public, private, and nonprofit organizations, that if we really use that to our advantage and manipulate the territory specific to being the wonderful Ward 8, right? It is the model for the country, hands down. So when I saw that, I'm asking myself, how do I motivate my demographic to understand? Because they're talking about us. I know they're talking about us, and I'm in the room, and they invite me to the rooms. But on the flip side of that, they won't pay me for the rooms. And so then it becomes, again, traumatic. Because you're inviting me, you're taking my information, and it's not just even there, it's other places and programming where I know that I've sat at the table. However, I'm yet to be able to leverage whatever it is I have, you want, into a livelihood and an income. So here's what I share when I'm in the think tanks now, because I only have one axis of which to do my work. There was a time when it was not fashionable to talk about Black. I did it anyway. And so what I say is, we are the only demographic who is less history, hierarchy, and heritage. We are the only demographic internationally that has caused that has that particular situation within which to deal with. And then when you just bring it to contemporary times, just recently, I believe in an article last week in Bloomberg, Ray Diallo said that inequality is the national emergency. And so when you look at that and you understand that inequality is the Western economic model, you understand that poverty is its driver, and there are numbers. These are not my numbers, these are the numbers that fit that bill. And when you look at Ward 8 Southeast DC, and that being the final frontier, kind of either which way we go, whether we manage to take it back into the power of the people or we allow it to continue to degrade into gentrification, that's still all on us, because the power is ours. We just have to own it, take it, and adapt it to what we want. And that, I find that in my personal experience.
Definitely. You touched on a whole lot of great points. I want us to break it down a bit. So you came here 10 years ago, and correct me if I'm wrong, you said that people weren't really talking about being Black in these spaces at some point. Was that the case even with President Barack Obama in the White House? And if so, why weren't people talking about being Black? Because my notion is that if there's, you have this historic election of a Black man in national office, that's all we would be talking about. I remember seeing, correspondence on MSNBC, CNN, Black correspondents, people finally talking about Blackness. Why is it in these think tanks that, they're not even entertaining?
No, it wasn't. So what really brought me in, if I could just share a quick story, and I don't know, I get kind of iffy about sharing names, because this thing, I want to be as transparent as possible, but this thing is what I call DC my beautiful beast. I love it, but it is something, I have to learn to navigate it. But I was at one of these events where the think tanks, and it was an economic summit. And because I come from this demographic, I understand that we are all doing something to make ends meet within our household. Whether somebody's doing hair, somebody's cutting hair, somebody's making kufis, we do something. And so this was an economic conversation, Bureau of Labor. And I was bringing that to the attention of a top financial advisor to top political proponents and whatnot. And so I'm saying that these women, me in particular, we all do something that creates income. How are you calculating that? Or are we looking at that? And at that time, it's coined micro enterprise or micro business, where we're moving it out of the space of a hobby, because now we know that they've accepted hustling. So now I was working to reframe what it looks like in our narrative. And he really just looked at me and said, we don't even count that. So what we're saying is there's a whole population of demographic of labor, whether you're working for yourself, you're working as an independent, or even with me, where a lot of my work came out of volunteering, and I wasn't informed enough to simply invoice at zero cost per price, right? But I didn't know that, nobody told me that, so I'm saying that whole demographic was being overlooked in that area, and I'm saying, you're just saying that they're not working, but you're not properly calculating. And so from there, we started seeing the micro enterprise, and we started seeing, I'm not saying that I'm taking full credit, absolutely not, but just saying that I know I had that conversation, and after that, I saw a lot more movement on it, and that's when you started hearing about the 40% small business entrepreneurship being, truly within the Black woman community, and we are the largest small business demographic creator coming in. And so it was really good to see that information coming out. It was really good to see them looking at, from a Bureau of Labor standpoint, micro enterprise, which now creates another avenue of income, or at least income opportunity for this demographic to speak to and work through and manipulate for their own benefit.
So with that being said, with the Bureau of Labor recognizing that this is a quickly growing group, is it that we're not organized enough as a community to support Black women on the entrepreneurial move? Who does the onus lie on within our community? Because, throughout this interview so far, it hasn't, we've talked about our relationship with the others and their establishment, and I just want to, All Eyes on DC is a do for self kind of show. So my question to you, just given that, how can how can working mothers, women who are entrepreneurs, how can they as a block, from what you see, unite and organize to capitalize off of that trajectory they're on?
That is a wonderful question. And I think about this often. I can't say I have a concrete answer, 1, 2, 3. But what I see is to utilize those of us who are enterprising, to create cohorts, to then bring in other women. I know for me, it didn't matter. Well, let me say this. So with my children, I have twin 9-year-olds. And when they were small, I couldn't find any programming that suit my particular situation. They may have had a job training, which I didn't need job training. I had over 70 jobs. And that's the other thing. I know what I want to do. So I would come with, I do this. And there was nothing that said, okay, we can give you this trajectory to take what you already do and go to work. So there was no dignity in that. So I found more dignity in where I know that I wasn't necessarily paid, but in speaking with the powers that be, it assisted me. So when it comes to us, I don't like to use blame, because I don't blame anybody for how we adapt to our suppression or oppression, or however we identify being in this world. I can't assume everybody identifies as such. But the onus for me, I live by 4 words: willingness, accountability, sacrifice, and negotiation. And it is my concern that we could definitely use a bit more of that in the community. Willingness to be vulnerable. Go ahead.
No, I was going to ask you to say those words again, but you were just on the money.
Yeah, willingness to be vulnerable, to know that I don't know some things, to know that I don't know, and to know that I need to know, and to know that I know who I can ask, and to humble myself to do that, and to be receptive to what they give me outside of whether we agree or not is not the point. The point is moving to a win-win situation. So that then comes in the accountability, right, of my actions towards you. And I always want to be accountable as not just a professional, but as a human. And that is something that's been missing for too long. I was literally at the museum a couple of weeks ago, and the guy said we had to put money and morals into this bill. And I'm like, if you say you had to put morals into the bill, what was there before then? But we have to be accountable to one another in our action. and always working from the most advantageous standpoint, you know. And so with that, you come to sacrifice or offering, whichever word you choose, which means I'm always willing to work through this, to negotiate, and I'm willing to give up something if you're willing to give up something for the greater good. And that really is, that's my philosophy for life, right? And so when I would call places or when I talk to people, I remind them, like, I know we gotta be reminded to be human again, because real life, corporate is not, corporate world, it's not, it's been removed. So when I bring them back to stasis, for me, and I say family is the economic model, and healing is the economy. You know what I'm saying? A regional economy comes out of that, which ultimately will lift. And so it goes right back to the small businesses. But this demographic, particularly over 35, 18 to 24, 18 to 34, they're kind of covered. There's plenty of programming. But what I'm sharing from the think tanks back to my demographic for myself is that if we're the largest growing demographic, then there has to be laser focus on this historically concentrated, marginalized demographic, right? There has to be a laser focus there, because if it were anything else, that's the way it would be handled on both ends.
But then it sounds like there's need for, you know, our think tanks, or just
absolutely,
you know,
absolutely.
You know,
I want to call it name, absolutely.
Or even just opportunities for us to, you know, study ourselves or advance, you know, the scholars.
The first study that I would love to do is a PT, you know, the ACE, ACE study. And so now that I think about it, and I actually did, I proposed an epigenetic study.
Forgive me, those of y'all who don't know what ACE is, you're talking about adverse
childhood experiences.
Okay, cool.
And I actually did submit a proposal for research to Johns Hopkins a few years ago on epigenetics. Because when you understand that epigenetically this trauma has been passed down through generations and millennia, I care not how many programs we put through, if we're not fixing our mind and our trauma, and because it's still questionable. I believe in data, I believe in science, I have no problem submitting to that, and I would love to see a study where we select a group, maybe this group that we're talking about, 40-year-old, so that we can actually get more data and how to program it specifically, but to run a PTSD scan. Like, I think that's simple. It's not really difficult. It's a matter of doing it. And what I say is that onus falls on us. That onus falls on us to make it known that we want that. And there are a few black think tanks. They just opened the Madam C.J. Walker one down in Atlanta, if I'm not mistaken. I would love to interact with them. But I consider myself a thinker. I definitely consider myself not necessarily an innovator, just that I say it, right? I don't think it, I say it. And so there's a balance in figuring that out, because everybody's not ready to move. And I had a business meeting a few weeks ago, and the gentleman just told me, he said, well, Maka, when you talk, people hear you closing like whole departments because of your efficiency. And I'm saying, well, that may be true, but I also come with an abundant aspect. So whatever I'm removing is fully fortified by something sustainable on the other end.
So that often sounds like a criticism that, you know, black women in general, well, from what I hear in different circles, it's a concern that they often hear. You know, they call it, you know, just black professional women in spaces. They often, you know, there's that fear, you know, when they come in and they speak on something, that it's more so out of, you know, a desire to shut something down than to improve a process. You know, can you speak about that, you know, just in the context, you know, because you mentioned it as part of your experience, but from what I'm hearing, this is not my first time hearing this. I hear this very often, you know, just our sisters in spaces, they feel like they keep getting shut down. Oh, we do get shut down like that. That happens, and that's what I'm saying. So that's why, you know, I'm not going to say the name, but that's why this is the only way that I address that, right? Because for me, it's easy for me to process once I know how you're looking at me. And I remove whatever insecurity or fear I can have about what you're looking at, and that helps me to get straight to my information. But it's very disheartening, and you feel it, and you sense it, and you know it. And because I don't have any solace, I can get shut down in my rooms just as easily as I can get shut down on Massachusetts Avenue. So it is what it is. But the thing, I think, is just to not stop. I truly believe in what I offer.
I know that what I bring to the table is valuable and worthy, because there's no way I would be sitting here without it. There's no way I would have met you 3 years ago doing what I was doing. I've worked with the highest, to some extent, level of DC upper echelon, and to have been able to do that in 10 years as an independent, and every room I walk into, I'm walking in as an independent. I credit that specifically to the geographic location of DC. I credit that specifically to the federal, to the private, to the non-government, and specifically to the way that it's set up, and that you can get to them. Like, it's not difficult, but the thinking, for whatever reason, has not risen to that level of understanding of what time we are in 2019, and how empowering utilizing these simple resources could be. Even if we just all got up and put on a t-shirt and we stood down there, you know, the show of strength is kind of what I'm looking for now, and that onus does fall, I believe, on us.
So to that point, you know, you call yourself an independent. 2 questions, right? What is your philosophy as an independent? I can get to the other question, because this one is, you know, kind of big. You know, if you can just go into as much detail as possible, because from what I understand, we got different types of independence, you know. So what is your philosophy as an independent? What do you want to see, you know, happen overall?
So that's a great question. When I say independent, that means that I'm not beholden to anyone. There's no rings I'm kissing. There's no boss. I was recently at one of the places where they educate the politicians and whatnot, because I like to understand the thinking of leadership at that level. And all they said was protect the boss and make the boss look good. And so that kind of is what leads to the situation that we're in now, right? So I don't have that problem. Now that there's a huge cost that comes with it, but that I never feel like I have to watch my mouth, so to speak. And when I say that, not being disrespectful, but as far as this thing that we're talking about is so thick in my soul. Like, I share with people that it feels like I feel like Jesus in the temple sometimes. I just want to knock over tables and be like, but that's not the diplomatic way to be about it. But because I have daughters, I have a son. My son is at his point where he's figuring it out, which way he's gonna go. And because none of us chose any of this, none of us chose it. It was given to us. It has been proliferated. It has continued. And when I look at it, there's no reason for it today. So in the very least, I'm gonna take my time to speak to it, because I'm not raising my daughters in this same hypocrisy that has gone on for millennia. I'm unable to do that. So I do my best. Like I said, I'm a parent practitioner. I'm definitely open. I know that I do not have all the answers. But when I go, like I said, I don't care which room it was. Like, for the most part, I always got pulled in farther, because the things that I need you to say, I didn't hear you say them. During the election season, I was at Brookings, and all the talk they were doing about the Constitution. But we know that in the Constitution, black people are not full human beings. And I'm saying, how is nobody asking this question in particular? And Joy Ann Reid was the only one on the panel with the panel full of Caucasian men. I would love to, and not to browbeat or anything, but I really would like to understand the thinking when we steady have these issues based on color, of what else could they be calling us, or what else does the world see, and how do we process? I asked someone today, how do we fix a problem we're not even willing to face?
So to me, you know, listening to you talk, when you say independent, what I imagine is, you know, you being the only person in the space, not only because of the way that you think, you know, but just because of going back to what we said about, you know, us as native Washingtonians not really understanding the local and the federal and what we have here, but just because there aren't people backing you up, or it feels like you might not be getting, you know, enough of that support, you know, that you should be getting from people just like you in your situation, who can accompany you to these meetings,
right,
and back up what you're saying, right?
Absolutely, I definitely would appreciate. Yeah, and it's independent in terms. So yeah, absolutely, it's independent in terms of pay and in terms typically of the work in and of itself. I'm always by myself.
Let's talk about that real quick, you know, because, you know, I know Washingtonians, native black Washingtonians, we're often very protective, of our city, of our culture, of our initiatives, of our turf when it comes to nonprofit spaces, political spaces.
I do not play with who we are in terms of universal law and creation, right? So when I look around at DC and I see all of us, and we got blacks in government right up the street, we got black teachers, we got all of this, and I'm still saying, I still don't feel a safe space for my daughters, right? And so I mind my business right now because I don't want to get jumped on, I don't want to get beat up. I know it's very serious, this native Washingtonian thing, and the things that are very serious, I just simply challenge, can we use that same energy to take some of this power back, right? But who wants to choose to be beat up, right? Nobody. So I mind my business because I know that, or I sense that if I speak what I really, really think, it may obliterate those. So I tend to just give my best and work in my consciousness and in my spirit to do the rest, because you can't go into nobody else's house and tell them how to move their couch. And I truly believe that. So I just work by and lead by example to the best of my ability.
So it sounds like you have this balance, I'm often told, I'm very bad at this, it's not what you say, it's how you say it. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yeah, but you remember now, I had to kill my nigga, you know what I mean? I had to kill it, and so working within willingness, first of all, I read body language, right? So I can read, and then I'm an empath, so I can sense where you're going. And I use all of that in my conversations across. Now, I don't hit every time, and a lot of times, to be honest, I walk away and I didn't really say what I wanted. I said what I was allowed to say. And the truth be told, the creator, just on the other side of it, the creator well, that's why you ain't making no money. I'm like, I can't figure out that. Now, that's the balance that I'm unable to figure out, that I told you to do this and you keep doing this. So that's my challenge. But I'm comfortable. This zone I can navigate, and I navigate it peacefully, right? That other space, I'm clueless as to what that looks like, but the creator has guaranteed me that's where my surplus is. But I respect DC enough that I'm taking the hit because I'm trying to figure out that balance respectfully and offering, I guess call me a lamb, like I've offered, and I have. I've done 10 years worth of volunteer work with major organizations in DC. I do feel like I've done the work, but DC then let me know, you're not native, bitch. You're not. This ain't you. You know what I'm saying? So that kind of hurt my feelings, and I step back, especially since my message is different. I can't deny that it's not in alignment right now, and it's not that I'm not changing. What do you say? Persuade me to do it. Persuade me to believe that, because where I stand, and especially the information that I have, I am an information junkie. So if I said it, you could best believe it's really some stats and whatnot. And so to sit there and have mundane, non-founded, it's not in my makeup. You know what I'm saying? I don't want to do that. So I'm out of my business. I love it here. I would never, I lived in Silicon Valley and I came back here, right? I love DC. I love the potential that it has. And I look forward, I work with the end in mind. I really do look forward to us owning our power, and really, if all of us just supported one another with what we got, and just, no, we ain't doing what y'all need us to do today. It would change the world. Literally overnight. So yeah, that's what I look forward to.
But you spoke to, something that could be an issue and all of that, just the whole money piece. Not a lot of us are willing to sacrifice, so to speak, or to invest that time, or to take less than what they would have made by going along to get along.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's the spiritual piece that I'm thinking about, because a lot of us are still trapped in that paradigm, it seems, and what's the balance in that for you? At what point, if you are doing this advocacy, is the situation more nuanced than what I'm making here,
I don't think so, no, because it's challenging, and I consider it, I pay the cost to be the boss, right? Because on the back end of that, my time is my own. I don't really think that, what can you pay for that? I can be wherever I want at any given time. That is priceless. But overall, what I think is needed for that, again, is more community push. right? Like, we have to understand the me's and the you's in the community, and we have to take that money. I support individuals who I support. I do my philosophy, my philanthropy work. And even when I was working, more of my funds went back out than I kept in terms of me working to establish myself as a philanthropist, right? So it is absolutely nuanced. It's absolutely challenging. But because it's so deep and thick in my spirit, like, I wish that I could sell out. Like, I thought that I could. I was like, okay, I need a job. Like, and I need a check. Like, and the spirit just, it won't let it happen, because I keep asking the spirit what I need to do, and the spirit like, nothing, you good. I'm like, you gotta be kidding me. No, ain't nothing for you to do right now. You know what I'm saying? And so when you have that connection, and I call it unicorns and fairies, all of my needs are met, right? And the more I'm educating myself, the more I'm breathing through my life and experiencing it, the river provides, right? And I can't think of one time I needed something and it did not appear. So I work with that as my precedent, right? And I think on my opulence, I think on my marina and my boat. But for the day-to-day of it, I'm at peace because my soul is there. I know I worked. I know I did. That's what I tell my children. I do's my job, right? Exactly. And so I'm good. You know what I'm saying? That doesn't mean that I don't have a very human experience in the process. That means that I'm grateful to be having the human experience today. And this didn't happen overnight. This 20 years of work in the making. But I am so grateful to have the capacity that I do. You know, I'm grateful when people like you invite me to come and share my thought process. I'm grateful that DC has welcomed me, and I have worked with wonderful individuals and mentors such as Janice Patterson and Aquarius Von Gospel. They are definitely, you know, national treasures to DC, one way or the other. So those, and that's what I tell them even, by virtue of me talking to you.
For those who don't know who you're talking about, would you mind explaining?
Absolutely. So Janice Patterson is the founder of Parent Watch, and Parent Watch works with judge advocacy groups, and she actually just assisted me. I'm living this thing. My son got arrested twice in 2 days, and luckily her advocacy assisted with us kind of avoiding some of the detrimental outcomes that could have happened with that. And so at one point I had an office key to the DOJ services up there on Mount Olive. That's where the office is. And Aquarius Von Gospel, she works with the resident family services with housing, DCHA. And so I assisted her with facilitating a year-long youth media group in Potomac Gardens. And so that's what I'm saying. I've worked with Imani Temple. I've worked with Ward 8 Arts and Culture Council. I volunteered with like the Kemp Foundation. So I love DC for that, because everything is right here when you're talking court. When you're talking business, it's the International Business District of the world. The IMF just had their World Bank just had their forum last week. You know what I'm saying? And so to be able, for the mind that can, right? So my thinking is, every other culture, the brain trust is the brain, right? That's what you protect, and everybody kind of lifts that up. And so that's kind of the thinking I would like to begin. Now we do it hood-wise, right? But if we could transfer that thinking into understanding that, if Sam has the capacity to move nationally, journalistically, and get that data out, and as far as pushing our narrative forward, and then Maka has the capacity to go into these rooms, touch these people, bring these people back to the table, like, how do we come together and actually maximize that momentum is what I'm looking for, because it's right here, and we're right here. And if I truly believe that if we utilize some form of unified movement on the federal front, that it would automate some jiggle motion and moving room on the local.
But how knowledgeable, from what you understand, are people of that connection? You know, because right now now the statehood issue is getting a lot more traction. And so, people are going to have to. Is there a knowledge gap?
So my information is typically somewhere else. And what I ask statehood, so this is what I ask, and anybody in the room, hi Miss Lucy, anybody in the room who could tell me different, tell me. What I ask them at the statehood place is, okay, Congress is 10 blocks in Capital City by itself. How do we begin to talk about statehood without talking about what we're going to do with Capital City? I don't understand that. You see what I'm saying? They're not giving up Capital City. So I don't like we call it verbal masturbation, right? And it's not, I don't know if that's typical knowledge. I don't know where it is. I know when I asked the office, they didn't have an answer, right? And so what I'm saying is that it's time out for that. Like, we don't have to just politicize problems anymore, because there are measuring tools and data metrics that give you absolute answers. So for us to continue to allow them to play with us like that, right? But then I come off as, I think my colleague told me I was brash or something, even though I'm just asking a question. Like, and I really would like to know, what is the plan for Congress in those 10 blocks in Capital City if you're gonna make this thing? I don't think that can happen before that, you understand? So for me, that's the conversation. In the same way when we were talking about health at the Ward 8 Health Council yesterday, how are we going to continue to talk about health without talking about this mental oppression, trauma that we've been in? And again, epigenetically, this is not my data. I'm just the one kind of stating it. You know what I'm saying? So for me, there are other access points for the conversation that are yet to even be touched on, which is why I've been in my house for the last 6 months.
So it sounds like we're going to get multi-layered here, you know, with what we're discussing before. So another portion of this program, you have a question, Mama C?
Yes, Nama, not Mama.
Nah,
Right.
no problem.
Capital City, what is that?
Capital, one moment. So Capital City, again, I'm not an expert in anything, but you can take the information and definitely research. So the 10 blocks of Congress, do you remember seeing a black car that says Capital City Police or whatever? So that's really Capital City Police. It's a separate jurisdiction.
So you're talking about Capitol Hill?
I'm talking about the 10 blocks of Congress, whatever.
Called Capitol
Yeah, Capitol Hill. Yes, ma'am.
Oh,
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Because I hadn't heard Capital City.
Yes, ma'am. So that is its own jurisdiction. And so something would have to be decided on how that will play out in terms of the statehood. And so for me, that's just where the conversation is. Like, and I'm still have to come back to you. Like, my vulnerability doesn't allow me to act crazy and then act like it never happened. I would have to come back and apologize anyway. So I would just prefer not to do it and say I did and go on about my business and come back at a more dignified time.
Many thanks, many thanks. Maka Taylor, y'all. Maka Taylor, y'all. Let's give her a hand, fam.
Thank you.
Give her a hand, fam.
Thank you.
Give her a hand.
Thank you.
So, time check, please, just to make sure we can cover all bases. All right, perfect. So at some point, we're going to open the room for audience questions. I'm just looking for a few inquiries about Maka Taylor and also about what we're going to talk about. Today, for this section of the interview, I want to cover health, I want to cover education, and I also want to cover family, pretty much. In addition to that, I also want to cover the economic piece. I think you touched on that quite a lot in the first half of our interview. So to make this interesting, which one should we touch on first? Let's make this very interactive. So we have education, health, economics, and the whole family planning structure type of thing. So which one are y'all thinking about first? Just feel free to say anything.
Nothing? No interaction?
Sure, so we have education, family planning, economics, and health. So 4 points, right? 4 points that we're going to talk about. Which one? Economics. Sure, economics. Okay. So it's a great point because we often talk about your experiences, right, with the nonprofits and other entities who aren't really paying what they should, right?
Mm-hmm.
So how do we organize around that? You know, because you're not the only one who's going through this, right?
Absolutely not.
A lot, you know, if you talk about pay
And historically, though, when you look at our leaders, they were, you know, Harry Belafonte supported, you know, Martin and whoever, the Nation of Islam supported Malcolm. And so historically, first of all, it's a paradigm, right? It's not valued work, so to speak. And even with like those who understand, they still say like, "You're that crazy stuff you talking." And that's the one thing you kind of can't say to me. You cannot discount my mind or my think. Now in playtimes, absolutely. But if I'm sharing a thought or a concept, just because you don't understand it, one of the worst things, that's what brings me back to that feeling. you cannot discount my thought because you don't understand it. We can discourse, we can agree to disagree, but for you to just be like, it's crazy, I typically don't just have absolutely crazy thoughts, so that's kind of unacceptable. But I believe that it's a paradigm that has to be addressed because the work, you got to think about it, there is a low value across the board, and then the value is not even being assessed. And so then here I come with an assessment, and especially particular to this, who are you to assess this situation, right?
How do you go about negotiating? You know, like at this point, what is the strategy, if there even is one, you know?
That's what I don't, so what I said a few weeks ago was, yeah, I'm going full-fledged ahead, and nope, I ain't got no plan, but the Spirit's got me. You know, and for me, I'm really in that space because the plan doesn't work. I've tried plans, I've applied for things, I've tried, none of that worked. What works is me being true to form. When the Spirit say you gotta go there, or you gotta go there, or be here, or do this. Even with the day that we saw each other, you know what I'm saying? And so that's what I follow. But I think that the more we really value individuals like us who do this thing, like and really do it, because the networks are what's most important, right? And once you know that you can move, and I know that I can move through my networks, but I'm not approaching my network without a group behind me. That would put me at a disadvantage on the other end. You know what I'm saying? So for me, I think that crowdfunding is huge too. I think that we need to begin, organizations should actually crowdfund for this position in particular. But it would have to also be a visibility of individuals like myself. You know, not you, you're kind of more established in terms of the journalism, but like for whoever, I know that there was one other woman in particular who I knew kind of did the same kind of work I did to some extent. And she did get some recognition. But I'm saying that there has to be an acknowledgement of that level of work at that level that it is at. You know what I'm saying? You can't be engaging with the top minds of the nation, not just DC. Because once you're in DC, you're national, almost international automatically. So if one is engaging at that level, that's the level they need to be paid and compensated at, because you're paid to think. And that's, we as a community kind of have to begin to embrace that, to pay the thinkers, because that's what it is, because the thinkers think the thoughts that execute the actions that move the things. But the more funded it is, the better the programming. Particularly, and I think with people like me and you, like, because we have such a track record of volunteering, that should therein be, you know, the equity that tells you what I'm willing to do.
But that sort of speaks to what's going on a larger scale across this country. You know, just, you know, people, the so-called 1%, you know, they're finding any way to get more bang for their buck, whether that's just, you know, hiring less people to do more jobs, or, you know, really stretching the whole volunteering type of thing.
Oh yeah, well, the more we value our own human capital and really understand what that is, especially in today's technological age where intellectual property is all the rage. I work to protect all of mine only.
But that's the thing, you know, we as a collective often don't know how to protect and monetize our intellectual property.
Absolutely.
What information have you been able to access, you know, in terms, you know, do you envision yourself, you know, just passing along that information, you know, to, you know, other black women and just, you know?
Well, ultimately, I would like, so I've been unable to successfully add the business part to my business, right? When I had, lessons come the way that they come. So I had a contract that was ultimately, whatever happened, something happened on the executive level that moved me out of that place. So when I had the funding, it had been so long since I had money, I really was just scared of like pinching little pieces. And so that kind of, but the lesson, right, I got it now. So now once I get it again, I know exactly what to do, right? But at that point, it was too scattered for me to really put everything together with it. But in terms of that, I just think that we just got to do the work. You know what I'm saying? And that's what I focus on. Like my alignment keeps me with knowing my precedent and knowing my needs are met. Like that's the best way I can put it. I know that my needs are met and I know that what I'm doing is good, right? And I would love to have more people with me. I would love to feel more. I feel disconnected more times than not. And it's not, I'm in a room full of people and I can still feel completely alone. And that doesn't feel good. And I'm not begging to get on with you. You know what I'm saying? And I feel like I done, like you see me, you know me, you know what I'm saying?
So then who do we get on with? Speaking to the whole crowdfunding piece, and I'm just speaking as somebody who often hears the same criticism, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you're so independent-minded, you have opinions that are on the fringe, you say stuff that turns people off, you can't be a unifier. How can you be a unifier and just, galvanize people while being independent at the same time?
I think that, to be honest, Sam, and I'm going to share the idea, I think that we just open the house for artists and people like us, right? Like, so let's say from this point on, I'm right there in Southeast on 21st Street, right? For people like me and you, like, come right there. Like, let's see what we can do. Let's put these Rolodexes down. Because people support me. I found it, like, people really do support us, but we don't want to go and get the support because we don't want to, like, what we really going to do with it? Like, how do we really mobilize and maximize it? I know it's my thing. And when I look at the beauty of all the people in DC and the beautiful things that individuals have done, like, it's amazing to me, the power and the human capital in this city. So I just want to use that for good, right? But it's a paradigm shift. And there are those that got to break the mold. You know what I'm saying? So the work, the spirit is there, like, for all of it. And I truly believe that, like, I work with the end in mind of us seeing not this whole Southeast gentrified, but somehow, some way, the power comes through and like, we stop it one way or the other, or we benefit from it. You know what I'm saying? Like, using the power. We can't make them now, we can't make them, but it's right here. Like, when I look around, it's so simple. Like, whether we just stop and one day we don't go to work, and then the next day, all we do is support local Black business, like just major infusions, right? But it's a paradigm, and paradigm shifting has to be one of the most difficult things that any of us experience.
And people are scared of just getting off the hamster wheel. There's that fear of, well, once I get off, am I going to keep the rent? Am I going to be able to maintain, keep food on?
But if you kill this though, like once you kill, and that's the thing, I had to kill. Once all of those insecurities was killed, like, what can you do to me, right? And that's what I say, like, I love people, but you can't talk to me about desperation. You can't talk to me about your baby needing pampers. You can't talk to me about not having a key nowhere. Like, I did all of that done, right? And I still managed to refrain from compromising to a point that I couldn't find myself at the end of the day, right? And so that's really what I'm speaking to. It's all about, and I don't care what you do. I'm saying whatever your particular niche is, I'm willing to support you in that. I just want us to stop playing with it and really do whatever their work is. Like, if you're going to be the worst person ever, that's great. Go be the best, worst person ever, right? Stick to it, though. Commit to it. And that's where I think, again, in paradigm shifting, we have to learn to commit. I don't think, like, it took me years to commit to myself. I did not want to deal with the fact that I was scared of money. Like, that was my Achilles heel, scared of money and being by myself. And I couldn't, I'm being super vulnerable and transparent. Even though I live like I don't have any family here except for my children, my Achilles heel and what I had to get over in my soul are those two things. So now that I definitely work with them, and what you can't, like, what can you do? I'm all in with this spirit. I'm all in with unicorns and fairies. I'm all in with the ancestors. And it's thick here. And so my direction it's gonna always keep me doing this work one way or the other. Now, do I work to try to make sure I balance the line, not toe the line, but balance it? Absolutely. But if I can't, it ain't nothing I can do about that. Because it's not pretty. We've been talking pretty. Where did they get us? They said that we're scheduled to have zero net worth by 2053. And that's even with Caucasians becoming extinct. What does that world look like? That doesn't scare us enough to try to start?
Well, it seems like a lot of us aren't even aware. We're talking about various existences. We have people in Sankofa who frequent this place who knows just what you're talking about. But there's a whole nother world out there. You go next door, You go down the street, you go some pockets of the city, we're not even talking like a lot of us still, from what you've seen it, we still pay credence to those people, you know what I'm saying, to those images, right? We look at them as the standard,
right.
you know, so what we're talking about, like you said, is a whole paradigm shift, right? One point I wanted to touch on that you brought up before we move on to health, that I think is a very good transition. You know, you talk about this whole spirit, you talk about just being connected to people, you know, and even though you haven't been able to monetize the way you wanted to your stuff, you talk about the power of your network, how your network has been your net worth. As a black woman in Washington, D.C., navigating these various spaces.
First of all, I truly do. I thank DC for everything that it is. I really, really do. It is, I call DC my college education, right? Because I say St. Louis made me, but DC raised me, right? Because it's a beautiful place, man. The spirit, the hues, like the cherry blossoms, like I got kicked out of California, and it never even dawned on me to go back home. Like, I had zero place to live, and somehow I still managed to come back here. And it was not, I've been here for like a month, and I'm rubbing my belly like, you're gonna have these babies. Like, why didn't you go home? And it hadn't even dawned on me until that moment, but because the work that's here, I belong here. You know what I'm saying? And so, when we're talking about, I'm sorry, say it to me again. I got all emotional.
No, it's fine. It's fine. By all means, you know, take your time and just talk to us about your network.
Yes. And so, like I said, I have worked with some major organizations in DC and Maryland and Virginia to some extent, and I can tap in. You know, whether I choose to use it or not, but I can definitely tap in, and I love that, and I love that my network knows it about me. Like, I'm known in my network for knowing things. I'm known for knowing things before they're typically general information, and that's all kind of stuff. Like, whether we're talking about which stocks to be looking at, or we're talking about what the policy white papers are, or we're talking about how to move such and such from here to there. I think about George McKenna, though, and the Spider Network. George McKenna is the brother who the Lean on Me movie was written about. And I actually had the opportunity to meet him, right? So even in my network, right? His card is in my network. And so I think about, and that's what I think about all the time. How do I leverage this, right? Because I'm at your top tier. And I find that that's what's amazing to me. And that's what I love about the district. I did that just from Eventbrite meetings, right? Like, real life. Like, it's nothing fancy to it. I'm not taking any proprietorship for any of this. It's relatively simple. And so when I look out, that's kind of what I'm looking to kind of get the movement on. It literally started with, okay, I don't have a social life. I enjoy political things. I enjoy analyzing things. So I found events on Eventbrite that I started going to. I would get on these listservs, and next thing I know, my name is here, there. We're getting these invites. Somebody from Oxford considered me an expert. Like, all these little things just started popping off that happened from going into whatever rooms they were. So the network is definitely there. I don't know what I have not or have done to position. I don't know what to do. Like, if I did, I would be doing it. But that's what I'm focusing on. Like, how do I leverage the network in line with the work that I do, though? You know what I'm saying? Because people will support me privately. They won't support me publicly. Because this is the crux of my work. Now, what I'm saying is it's the pathology of it on both ends, though, oppressed and oppressor, along with the word in and of itself and the behavior ideology. So the network is definitely there, and I would say it's up there to your top, because we in DC, like your top 1%. And I feel like it's not, everybody should have it, though. You know what I'm saying? It's available, and you should be able to tap in and utilize those resources as needed.
So you've met these people just in the course of your work, you know, being in rooms and maintaining relationships.
Absolutely.
So how do you do that? You know, how do you maintain those relationships?
You know, I think that's a great question, because it's really what I say. It's not a game, it's just to put it's long game strategy, right? So there's no push, it's typically, hey, how are you? We'll exchange information. But to put it one of my funniest stories, I had met a gentleman at I used to go to a lot of Atlantic events. And I had met a gentleman there. This is their economic summit, I think about 2 or 3, maybe 2015. And I hadn't called him, but he was a finance guy, and I knew that he was like a top finance guy. And he had told me that I could call him anytime. Of course, you know, people typically, you think they say that in jest, but the thing is, you have to have the gall or the courage to try it if you need to talk. And so I called him, and I was talking to him about our human equity, human capital, and what. So he helped me with the language. He was really helpful, and I hadn't spoken with him since I met him the first time I called him, and then I called him again just to get a reiteration, and he took the call again. So I have a good memory for one, so I kind of remember, like, you know, that political mind that you need to be like, so I typically remember people anyway, and then I may stay in touch with them through one of your social medias, through LinkedIn, through Facebook, through Twitter, or hey, how you doing? But it's what you call rapport, and it is a lost art, I believe, and it starts with the crux being customer service. First of all, I'm typically likable until we start getting into in-depth conversations, but I'm typically receivable, you know, in the immediate, so that helps.
Yeah, that definitely sounds like something I go through. Yeah.
Yeah, they receive you in the first 2 to 3. That's why.
Yeah. Let's talk about health. You know, we're living in a city where black women, where maternity is an experience that is anything but pleasant. You know, at the aggregate. You know, we have hospitals shutting down. Maternity wards are pretty much, you know, under-resourced. With that being said, you know, just given the fact that at the very start of life, somebody coming out of a womb in DC has, you know, less of a chance of a good life versus that. You know, how do black mothers as a collective deal with that? You know, just going back to what you said about your voice is not being heard collectively.
Again, that's a great question, and for me, this goes to the crux. Again, it's a system that's designed, and it's a demographic that bears the brunt of that. And so when you look at black maternal health, it's a result. I was actually sharing this with someone from the Health Council today. Epigenetically, there are various traumas that live within us that we don't even understand. And so when you look at a pregnant mother who, depending on what her pregnant mother looked like, may not be taking the best prenatal care or coming out of various infestations in the household, right? And because we are addressing it symptomatically as opposed to diagnostically, for me, that is the issue. You know, when you talk about it across the board, there is not, the truth of the matter is the system is not designed for us nowhere. So at the point it's coming out in health and in birth, it's a manifestation of what was never meant to be. Anyway, when you look at Planned Parenthood and you understand that Planned Parenthood aborts more black babies, and it was 10-to-1 urban to like rural, like there are various steps in place that are, I believe, simply manifesting themselves through maternal rate and birth deficit. I think that for me, I can't talk for no other black woman, but like I say, we are the only culture that is less history, heritage, and hierarchy, right? We don't have that. And so there are things that your health, it's all inclusive, right? To know where you come from, to know how you're supposed to eat, to know how, and we don't even want to look at it like for real. Like we don't want to look at those realities. So I don't know how to speak to it. I know that if anybody asked me where I found my best health, it was when I found out that I could live without eating animals, right? I did not even have that thought process, and I didn't think I could do it. Now, right now, I'm absolutely a flexitarian, but I am a vegan chef. I know about the different herbs. I can go and make me a master cleanse. Like, I'm never really worried about my health because I know I can do a 3-day reset. You know what I'm saying? I'm good.
How do we go about spreading that information and just making it, you know, it is out there, but, you know, just with a whole lot going on, you know, how do we go about spreading that and making that more of a habit, more, you know, because you're talking about food deserts, you're talking about lack of access, you know, expanding budgets, you know, well, not even expanding budgets, small budgets, and just so many other obligations, and even just the trauma that's being passed down. How do we break through all of that? There's not one solution, but where do we start?
So for me, I made some connections yesterday at the meeting, and Giant has a new wellness little, you know, venue that they have that they want to use. So I'm talking to them about doing some juicing classes and just really, and that's the whole point that I want to use the commercial kitchens in the PHAs, right, the public housing, because I'm saying we could create a cafe, somebody can run it, you know, whether we plant-based, flexitarian, whatever, the goal is to get it and see, but my thing is, I don't want to be beholden to the same system ties and situations that got us here, right? So I want you to recognize that I got this skill. You know I got this skill. And just put me in position, right? And that seems so foreign to those that make those decisions sometimes. And I'm saying we have to begin to self-validate. And that's why it brings me to not patting me on my own back, but saying I am the model, right? If anybody is self-validated and is maintaining their position and doing the work and being recognized, doesn't really matter. I mean, of course they want to be paid as an individual, but I'm saying that the pay can't matter because all these other credentials and factors are met, which means that there's something that's holding that other piece out anyway that ain't got nothing to do with her or his or her skill or ability. So
it really does, man. You know, because I mean, you're talking about perception and bias on the workplace. That's a lot to navigate, and you know, we gotta acknowledge the double whammy. You know, that is, you know, just for the sisters. You know, and I'm not one to bash. I'm not bashing anybody. I'm not speaking negatively. I'm just speaking the truth. You know, I appreciate you being on the show talking about that. And I'm actually glad that we got into some of what you do and what you're advocating for. Can we talk about the public housing piece real quick? You know, just how public housing, what part does it play in all this for us?
So again, that's a great question, and I hope to stay out of trouble. I apologize beforehand, just in case. But I do hail from St. Louis, Missouri, which had the very first project, Pruitt Igo, and my people, my grandmother is from there, my mama from there, we from there. And there's a documentary that I encourage everybody, I'm on record with the DCHA talking about it. But whether they like it or not, housing is implicitly complicit in the breakup of the black family. And they have a responsibility in rectifying that, in my humble opinion. When you go back to the policies that will remove the man from the house in order for the woman to receive housing and assistance, that was just bass backwards, and it did not work out properly. And when you look at our statistics, you know, this 2000, so in the 60s and late 50s, 60s, we still had 2-parent family homes. Coming out of the Black Power movement, moving into the crack era, that kind of became a complete myth or a unicorn. All praises due, I was in a 2-parent family home, dysfunctional as it was. He was there. But when I look at housing in various ways, even when you look at Section 3, I didn't know anything about Section 3 until about 3 years ago.
Because it's very, if I recall correctly, one of the at-large council candidates actually mentioned Section 3 as an alternative to Section 8.
Really?
Yeah, there's some difference.
Well, Section 3 is the job aspect of, so it's not even called Section 8 anymore. It'd be the Housing Choice Voucher Program. Okay. And that's the reason that I use it in my bio. I use it in my bio because I love the juxtaposition that I live. Right? And it just is what it is. So now I build myself as a lived experience poverty expert. We're fixing that. But when it comes to housing, I found myself sad. Like at the bottom, because now I believe they're trying because there's a lot more information on Section 3. But Section 3 is the program that says that if you get government or federal dollars for development, then there's a certain amount of percentage that you have to put from housing to work. Now my part gets really kind of precarious because I work on the business services professional end, and I'm yet to see what that programming looks like. And when I asked for the program model, it kind of like set off rockets that ultimately, I believe, played into even why whatever happened with the program that I was working for ultimately came under fire and to some extent suspension. So my thing with housing is that I believe, and they're doing, since this new director has taken over here specifically, I do see a great deal more transparency, I see a great deal more information. But again, when you have created a particular mindsets create behavior patterns that then have to be reversed and rectified. And because specifically in DC, I found out, I think you know, that there was a law in 1836 that prohibited blacks from any profit-making activities. And so when you look at those types of things in line with the generational deficit, there has to be something more than paperwork and transparency to push that forward. And so HUD recently had an open comment, they had an open comment section on Section 3. And so I submitted my information. And what I asked them also, I had submitted to DCHA as well, is what I said is if you were really working to get me moved through this process, right? Because if we were to get into the numbers with HUD, like, it's amazing. They have like $70 billion that's unaccounted for, that basically whatever they misallotted was at the same level as the DOD, like the Department of Defense. That's a staggering number. And so what I'm sharing with them is you all could have been teaching procurement and contracting the whole time, right? You have the department, the infrastructure is really in place. It's just about jiggling and shaking it through for those people. And I'm not saying everybody, but you only have a 3% like number to hit for the professional services. So for that 3%, if you were automatically offering like contracting and procurement, coming in to signing your paperwork 2 to 3 years, they up and at them, but that's not really, that goes back to that you kill departments maker, right? So that's what we're working against.
Bureaucracy, they don't want to really, you know, you might have some good people in there, of course, but at this point in time, a lot of what we have is not geared towards solving the problem.
Right, exactly. And that's on either end. Like even when I was at a leadership summit this summer, and that was ultimately the question, because there's a lot of talk. But I'm done with the talk, you know, and we are really at a time where you can move the needle relatively easily because infrastructures already exist. There's certain, and I believe I would rather have 3 very capable individuals full of capacity than 300 nonchalant bodies moving something forward, because I've seen the power of consciousness to manifest something.
But then again, you know, from what I'm seeing and what you're telling me, that goes back to the whole education piece, just being able to navigate these spaces and think critically about what it is that we need as a community. Which brings me to my next question, and we're on the education portion now. So we're going to do education, and we're going to wrap up with the whole family plan piece. So with the education piece, you know, black women as a demographic, one of the fastest growing in the education space, acquiring degrees, really, you know, really making it happen, even if they aren't acquiring degrees, like you said, they're entrepreneurs,
right.
They're in small business, you know. I wanted you to talk more about the education landscape, and you know, from what you've been seeing here, you have an idea of what goes on federally, and you see what's happening locally, right? What direction is education moving in, and how can black mothers, you know, who are out there on the grind, how can they counteract that, or how can they navigate that?
That's a great question, Mr. Collins. So for me, it was most important for me to, first of all, like, So let me say this, the lottery system completely changed the way that I saw school for DC when we're talking about that age group, right? I didn't need the lottery system. The lottery system put women like me at a disadvantage because we knew how to go out and locate the schools. We knew how to do the research. We knew what we were looking for. So even with that, I find those types of practices to be counterproductive in terms of moving the needle. Because if that is what was going on, then that meant you find it's 8 wards. You find 2 women per ward, right? To create a sustainable development within this process to then just help to navigate, right? Which empowers one another. But with bureaucracy, it typically kind of creates more bureaucracy, right? So that was an issue. It was really an issue for me starting out because I couldn't get the school that I wanted, so it was like really a pinch because I didn't need that. And even where they were like filling out applications, like I didn't understand it because my mind, I am a critical thinker. I believe, so when I was in 4th grade, I remember doing the Socratic method. Do you? And I don't remember who I wrote about that. I might have wrote I don't know who I wrote, but I definitely wrote somebody asking, why don't we reintroduce this? Because I believe that had a major impact on my ability to think critically moving forward and to analyze information of my own will and accord and present it in a fashion that was intelligible and able to be comprehensive. Looking around, I don't want to say my own words, but the tall tale is that in some shape, form, or fashion, they're working to remove public education altogether. And I do believe that I've seen that. I can't really talk in depth on that at right now. As I shared, I know that I was at the Hoover Institute a few weeks ago. When it comes to education, I have an axis point, that is the deliberate dumbing down of America, which was written by Charlotte Iserbyt, a former Department of Education administrative executive, and she talks about the deliberate dumbing down of America. And when you look around, I know that I find myself at odds because I use 4-syllable words. And I'm not even like, it's not a joke, it's not a game, how intense that can get from time to time. And that's just really, I enjoy talking. Like I spent time learning how to talk like that. I just enjoy, and plus it's a concise language for me, right? Using the language in this way, it says exactly what I wanted to say.
That resonates with me. I truly understand that. So how do you go about, just balancing that, being in those spaces and then just walking among people?
Not well.
Because the language piece again,
not well.
A lot of connotations with the whole language piece. Language is often weaponized, but you found a way to use it to your advantage.
Absolutely. So what I think I'm moving into now, what I told my son, I said, well, son, I think that I'm really just going to kind of settle into it, right? And what I'll do is just be like, oh, I'm sorry. I thought you were at that level. I apologize for the assumption. Because what else can I do, right? I've had a woman with 4 degrees over 70 years old say, I just think you try to make people feel bad. And I swear to God, utilize that across the board. Because it's a difference in, hey, young, sit down. And excuse me, because you have a seat. It's a difference. Like I say, even with the metro drivers, when they transferring buses, I said it would be courteous if you all to say, excuse me, we're just transferring, we'll be right back. But it's such a lost art. So again, I just try to lead by example. You know what I'm saying? People typically share with me. They have a wonderful experience, whatever love they feel. I worked with Lucy at the Congressional Black Caucus, and we had her, that's why I know who she is. And that's where I find my balance. I love people. I know that typically I got to get in and get out because I'm going to get on your nerves because typically it's 99% and then us, you know what I'm saying? So I get in where I can, I serve and I offer what I have to serve, I offer, and I go back to my sacred space. And I'm okay